Essentially expanded replay to include 2 more plays. Now, the unique thing that's different with OPI and DPI, different than the other fouls, if no foul's been called on the field, we can challenge to put a flag on.
NFL owners meetings earlier this week. On Tuesday, that's Sean Payton speaking with the press after the owners voted to expand the league's replay review system. That was Payton talking about that. Terry McAuley, who is the Sunday Night Football rules expert that NBC uses each week. He's also on the Notre Dame broadcast on NBC. He's a veteran NFL official, also an LSU grad, and making his way back here to Off the Bench. If you recall, he helped us out the week after the Texas A&M LSU 7 overtime game, giving us a little insight on some of the rules, and he's kind enough to stop by here on what I imagine is a very busy day. So, Terry, thank you and good morning.
Good morning, Jordy. Good morning, T-Bob. How you all doing?
Doing
Thank
good.
you so much, man.
Absolutely. Good to have you back on the show.
Can I ask a question first? How's the weather down there? I'm coming down this weekend and looking forward to visiting down there. How's the weather?
75 degrees right now, Terry. It feels like San Diego.
I feel like we just jinxed it, but it's been perfect the last 4 days.
Oh, great to hear.
Past 4 days have been incredible. It'll be good to have you back down in the South. Okay, so you saw the rules change. You heard Sean Payton talking about it, where essentially he says, "Look, they're just adding 2 plays to review here." Give me your first thoughts once you heard that the rule was actually going to change.
Yeah, obviously I'm going to come from an officiating perspective, and I'm somewhat disappointed. Philosophically, I think highly subjective decisions need to be made on the field and stay there. And there's nothing more subjective than offensive and defensive pass interference. So that's from a philosophical standpoint, and I guess I'm probably behind the times. But from a more real standpoint, I mean, anytime you add something that's going to create more stoppages, and basically you're going to have more time watching football players not play football, I have issues with. And I don't think this is just going to get to the big miss that you had in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. I think there are, and we've already heard they're going to be more technical than I think you would expect when it comes to replay reviewing these situations.
And Terry, so you raised a lot of good points on Twitter, and you talk about the technicalities, and I want to get into that. Like, in your view, how do you think they look to codify this sort of stuff, right? Like, let's say a Hail Mary. It can get pretty aggressive in that scrum. A lot of times, like, do you get together as referees and say, okay, well, in this situation, we'll maybe let them get away with a little more? Like, how do you start to – it sounds great to review it, but how do you start to put that into actual codified rules?
That's that's a great question, and you have the rule as written of pass interference. And what you're always looking for is material restriction. Is there enough material restriction? Does one player materially affect the other player's ability to catch the football? And that is incredibly subjective. And in a normal situation, if it's right on the edge, officials generally don't throw the flag. I mean, they kind of give the benefit, let them play, unless it's clearly and obviously a foul. But when you get into the HD slow motion replay, you can see a lot more, and you can know that arm grab maybe happened 2 frames before the ball got there, so it's now a foul in replay that would never have been called on the field. The perfect example, and I put it out there, was the pass to Brandon Cooks in the Super Bowl, and just before the game-clinching interception. Well, in real time, nobody thinks that's a foul. Nobody even questions it. And then they go to slow motion replay, and Romo correctly says, well, there's a little bit of an arm grab may have had an effect. My understanding, they looked at that in the committee, and they said, yes, that's an example of what we want replay to call from now on. And that is a because I don't think that will ever be called on the field in real time. Just nobody can see that, but apparently replay is going to reach out and get that technical. And whether it be a frame or 2, the bang play is gone. If he's there early, he's there early.
And because that's what's really stuck with me, your tweet about the frame by frame situation, because it is something that humanly it's not possible. Is there any way that you see maybe this becomes like, okay, only if it's blatant, or is then that just way too subjective if you're trying to just kind of generally interpret the rules.
I think it is. I mean, it's either a foul or it's not based on the rules. And if you have clear visual evidence that yes, he grabbed the arm a frame early, or he ran into him or went through the back a couple of frames early, then I think they're going to have to make the call in replay. And it's really going to set us up. I mean, yes, we have the coaches challenge in the outside 2 minutes, but in those 2-minute drills, when you have every pass contested, how many of those are we going to have to stop and look at to see if a player's a frame early?
Yeah, I mean that's going to be intriguing, right? And then you have like this extra layer of 2-minute strategy where look, no matter what, hurry up the line, get that play off as soon as possible, which they want to do anyway, so that they can't review the play. I mean, it's definitely going to have an impact. One of the main reasons for changing the rules, and we're talking to veteran NFL referee and Sunday Night Football rules expert Terry McAuley, also Louisiana native, but one of the main reasons for changing it was they looked at, the number of, quote, incorrect pass interference calls and just the effect that a pass interference call has on the outcomes of games. It was seen that pass interference has like a very big effect on the games. How do you feel about replay being an avenue to kind of fix those, quote, incorrect calls?
Well, certainly that is one solution. My solution would have been to look at, are there systemic problems of why we're having so many incorrect calls that are affecting games? I mean, yes, you're going to get an occasional error. That's just going to happen. But are there now so many that you have to take this next step to go to replay? Did they look thoroughly at the training, at the evaluation, at the personnel that has gotten us to this point? And did they decide, okay, we can't do anything about that? This is the best we can do. Now we have to go to replay. That's a concern in and of itself for me.
So, Terry, what happens now? The rule changes. What happens with your crew? Do you guys go into training immediately as far as looking for ways to govern the game differently?
Well, not my crew, because I now don't work for them. I'm not a referee for the NFL anymore. But that's what they will do. I mean, they'll go to some OTAs and they'll start getting a lot of video together, and they'll have a mini clinic in May where they'll talk about this, and then they'll talk obviously their big clinic in July, where they'll try to prepare themselves for how this is going to play out. I mean, are there unintended consequences, and how can they manage this such that it doesn't take over the game?
It's going to be an interesting year, no doubt about it. There's going to be some low moments with it, some high moments for sure. Talking to Terry McAuley. Let's talk about some of the other rule changes that were made yesterday. One interesting one that just kind of mentioned at the end of a bunch of these articles, the New York Command Center can now eject players for flagrant fouls. Is this a bit like targeting from the college game? Like how do you see this working?
Well, and last year they were able to do that for non-football acts. Now they're able to do it.
Okay.
If they've thrown a flag for a personal foul and New York deems it to be flagrant, then they can add the disqualification, add the ejection. I don't see that as being a big difference, because last year we actually saw quite a few situations where officials were throwing people out or ejecting people for what didn't seem like a flagrant violation. So I'm not sure how much this is going to come into play. I think it's going to be effective if the officials just don't see the whole act and they get part of it, and yet they missed the punch or something like that. So I don't see this as having a tremendous difference this year.
And then one other one, Terry, before I let you go, thank you so much for joining us today. Veteran NFL referee, Sunday Night Football rules expert Terry McAuley here on Off the Bench. All blindside blocks, according to what I read, now illegal. I guess, to me, like, okay, if a guy has a chance to make a play on the ball and he doesn't see me coming and I hit him, is that a blindside block? Does it, like what's the cutoff there for technically how that works?
No, from what I understand, if you're moving back toward your own goal line or parallel, you can't make forcible contact with your shoulder, forearm, or elbow or head. You have to either screen him off with your body or lead with your hands.
Wow.
So you will still be able to block, but you just can't make that crushing decleater that we've always seen, leading with the shoulder or forearm or whatever, or you blow somebody up. So you're still going to be able to do it. Certainly, if you're trying to make a play on the ball or whatever, that wouldn't be part of it. The one that'll be interesting is the crackback block, how that will work, because you already can't go to the head or below the knee. So now, does that wide receiver have to lead with his hands as he comes in? I think that'll be part of the discussion as they move forward.
Do you guys have too much to think about?
I mean,
down there?
when you're talking about like elbow, I
guess not you guys, but do officials have too much to think about with these world-class athletes moving at the rate and speed they are and having to think and govern the game in which they do?
There is a lot of that right now, the complexities, especially dealing with defensive players, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one thing that surprised me about them moving to the offense and defensive pass interference in replay. I thought they would first go to player safety fouls and make those reviewable, because I put those in a different category of anything else, and I'm a little bit surprised they didn't go that direction. Given their emphasis on player safety in the past few years. But yeah, that's with the use of helmet and the crackbacks, and is he parallel, or where now does he hit him with his hands or his shoulder or what first? It is in real time. It's very difficult.
Terry, this is fantastic, great information. I know you have a busy day. Thanks for squeezing us in.
Thanks very much, guys.
You got it. Enjoy home this
have a great
weekend.
day.
Terry McAuley with a couple of minutes giving us an update.
Can't get a better voice to talk about rule change.